Hey, so, as you can probably tell by my, clothing this time, it's not nearly as, well, it's a bit later than I would normally go out, and it's also not nearly as nice out, but, all things considered, for a cloudy, fairly cold November evening, it's not too bad. One nice thing about when the weather's like this, I mean, since I'm one of those weird people or whatever, is there's not that many other people out. Who would have thought? When it's not that nice out, not many people go out, huh? But anyway, besides all that, I was going to make a video on something else today, but then hopefully I can get the camera to a better position this time. So, I mean, it looks stupid anyway, but so you'll see less of a big close-up of my fucking face. And you'll just be able to mostly see my expressions to a degree. Or whatever you want to see. And I know that the microphone actually is fairly sensitive. So I really don't have to have it that close to my face at all. It's pretty crazy. And one thing that sucks about that is cars make a lot more noise passing by than I would think. But yeah, anyway, I was going to make a video on something today. On one of my walks or whatever, one of my walks I feel like doing. But then I decided to change the topic I was going to talk about, and instead talk about almost do an old school YouTube, a very old school original YouTube thing of making a response video in a degree. So this one, it's not really a response in that I'm trying to be controversial or some crap, or garner some kind of extra attention by talking about some person who's some channel who's got 1 million subs more or some crap like that people used to do, but just a response on the general same topic that this person talked about, and that is Christoph's most recent video since of the making of this recording, from the Uncanny Deduction channel. Oh, nice. Now it's now it's starting to drizzle a little bit. Oh well. But with this response to Christoph's video talking about our, as he called it, our shadow side. Others might call it what he also said, our animalistic side, whatever, our beast side. Others might say our evil side or whatever, our dark side. Basically, at least unless I was misunderstanding, what his video was kind of talking about was, potentially that our shadow side, as he called it, maybe this is something that we shouldn't try to suppress or, say, ignore or try to completely get rid of or whatever, but instead maybe something we should embrace to a degree, or, one could, at least I could say, like, mastering, or whatever you want to call it, learning to control this side to some degree. It's not necessarily the same thing as completely getting rid of it or whatever, completely, completely shutting this away. So, if you master something, that means that you have kind of full control over it to a degree. Like, just because you become, say if you become a master of your shadow side or whatever, that doesn't automatically mean that you... I'm gonna stop walking right now because I might have better cover under one of these trees. Maybe I'll go over here actually. I don't feel like getting fucking soaked this whole time. Yeah, this might work. Thank you, tree. Even though your leaves are a little bit sparse, but hey. But just because you say master your shadow side or master anything really, that doesn't necessarily mean that you completely get rid of it at all. Like, to me, that would say that you still have it, obviously. It's just something that you've learned to keep tabs on, keep control of. You've learned to use it in a useful way instead of being hampered by it or whatever. And in this regard, I think he has a point. When I was talking about some of my topics on video games and such, or, well, really so far I've only talked about one video game, but I've mentioned other video games at the same time. So, in that same vein, like, at least with Earthbound, say with the previous video I made with Magicant, where Ness appears to be conquering or getting rid of his shadow side, his evil, the evil within his heart kind of deal. But one could also interpret that maybe he's not, because maybe he's not in that degree. He's not destroying it or whatever, even though it may look like that. Maybe he's not. Like, maybe he's taming it, kind of. Like, and then in that taming, he is kind of accepting it and mastering it to a degree and coming to terms with it instead of destroying it completely. Because, one could even say that his evil side was not wrong, and it said that you cannot beat me. Is that maybe you can't get rid of your evil side. It'll always be there. The yin and yang. There's always some good within evil. There's always some evil within good, that kind of deal, if you want to go by that. And in his case, this potentially merging, or whatever you want to call it, this taming, this mastering of both of his good side, his evil side, whatever, is what gives him great realization, or gives him great insight, gives him great power, much more than he had before or whatever. He's able to conquer both sides of himself or whatever, master both sides, take control, realize both sides, the potential of both sides. This is just, like anything, up to interpretation here. I could, to some people, be completely talking on my ass here, which is fair enough. I'm just kind of looking at it like, maybe. I don't think it's that much of a stretch. This kind of dynamic or whatever can even be seen in other games as well, obviously. It's not just, it's not just one game. But there's a lot of games, like a whole lot of games that have this kind of theme to a degree. Especially like, quote-unquote, conquering your evil side, your shadow self or whatever. I will hang out under this tree instead. This very beautiful giant oak that we have around here, or whatever this is. I think it's an oak. And some other examples, I guess, on this topic are, let's say, at least a few that I thought of, like literally just kind of right off the bat. There's so many other examples, but let's say the Legend of Zelda series. Like, there is, a whole bunch of Legend of Zelda games, and I don't know how many, because I haven't played most of them. There's so many of them, but I haven't played a good majority of them. At some point, one of the boss fights or whatever you have to do generally, in some form, is you are fighting your evil self, or whatever, the dark reflection of yourself, Link, in this case. Dark Link, Shadow Link, Evil Link, whatever. The same can be, as I said, with Ness fighting the evil within his heart, is that maybe in the end, when you're fighting your shadow self, or whatever, your shadow self, the shadowy side of yourself, the evil part, whatever, the dark side of yourself, the animal side, that maybe you're not destroying it. And I think that is a very likely interpretation of that, is like you're never, that side never goes away. I think that's kind of what a point that is to be made here, is that it's always with you, but possibly the conquering of it, and one could say you could conquer something by accepting it or whatever, accepting it to be a thing and then taking control of it or whatever. The ability to know it is there, but not to be overwhelmed by it or to be negatively influenced by it, but to use it for yourself, for the greater improvement of yourself, whatever. And that's pretty much kind of the point I'm getting at here, but I'll go on to the other examples before I go too far, I guess, even though I think that's mainly the point. The Legend of Zelda, as I just said, with the Shadow Self. Earthbound, when Ness defeats the evil within his heart, whatever happens, accepts it maybe. And another game I thought of, which is, at least in the US, Final Fantasy III. They have a whole weird chronology thing where it was like different games in Japan, but at least as far as I played it on an emulator at some point, it was a good game. I liked it a lot. Final Fantasy IV in the US, at least. And the character that you play throughout the game, or the main character you play throughout the game, is this guy, Cecil. And when you start the game, you are, at least this character, Cecil, is basically doing these pretty horrible things in the name of this king or ruler or whatever. And after he does these deeds, you find out that the king was corrupted or something like that, being influenced by evil force, yada yada. And then Cecil basically kind of what would you call it, would argued with them, saying, that was fucked up, or something around those lines, like, this is not right. And they banish him or whatever, basically say, hey, never come back, or something like that, or they try to get rid of him, whatever. But his class in that game is, they have the class system in Final Fantasy, the later games, or whatever, after I guess all of them, but the career or whatever that he is in this, when he starts out, is a Dark Knight, which, would immediately give you the impression that, yeah, that's not exactly a quote-unquote a good guy. And what you have to, after doing a whole bunch of stuff involving this, like mostly what one could consider good deeds, I guess you could say, on his journey, he eventually has to go to the top of this mountain to basically face a trial on himself or whatever, a personal trial. And on this personal trial, the important part is that, well, basically the entire point is that he fights or acknowledges or conquers the evil in his heart or something around those lines. Basically, he comes up to a mirror or something like that, sees the reflection of himself, and I probably need to play the game again if I ever talk about it, because I'm kind of forgetting the exact details on this, but he somehow changes this part of himself by looking at his own reflection, and he becomes basically the antithesis, or whatever, the exact opposite kind of what a Dark Knight would represent, and that is of a paladin. And at least in fantasy, now it's starting to rain heavier, but whatever. At least in fantasy settings, a paladin is like almost the ultimate kind of representation of kind of the lawful good. Like, you know, even like I know there's subclasses in D&D and stuff, but generally a paladin would be the most strict form of a lawful good character archetype, where they can do no evil sort of deal, or that would be against their code completely, which they're completely bound to their code, you know, and to a fault. Like, that's one of the character faults of paladins, is that they are so strictly bound to this code, and to the code of being good and lawful good and everything, the laws and the goodness and all that, do no evil and everything, destroy evil kind of deal. So he became the antithesis of like what a Dark Knight would be. And ironically, in doing this, you know, maybe it's not great for this point, maybe it is, I don't know, is that he kind of abolished completely his dark side, kind of, by becoming this paladin from a Dark Knight. And at least from what I could see from a gameplay perspective, it was kind of a detriment to him, even though in the end he needs to be a paladin. But for generally, in all the combat, like, as a Dark Knight, he was much more powerful in almost every regard. And when he became a paladin, he just became a weaker healing warrior. Like, he did crappier damage, like way crappier damage. He couldn't do AoE attacks. He had like a pretty weak-ass heal compared to the actual healer in the party and everything. So, besides the story necessity, he was just way weaker as this form. And one might say that, yeah, to his own detriment. And, you know, that's what one could say, is that if you try to abolish the dark side within yourself, or whatever, the shadow self completely, is that's what you'll get. Like, you'll just be a less powerful version of yourself, kind of, or whatever, like the not full potential of yourself. It's almost not a good thing to try and completely do that. And sorry that one went on so long, but I don't know. It's getting fucking heavier rain, it's getting colder, whatever. I want to finish this. But the last example, the last example I wanted to give, at least in terms of a gameplay example or whatever, a game example, was in this old Sega Genesis game, Altered Beast. Is, you know, as we were saying with the shadow self, the dark side, the dark self, whatever, as one could say that it was almost like the beast side, the bestial side of yourself, the animal part of yourself. And in this game, Altered Beast, it's a very basic game. You know, what can you expect from a game this old kind of deal? But your character is going from the left to the right of the screen. I think it auto-scrolls. And he just has to defeat basically all the enemies in his way and get farther past or whatever. Advance farther and get through the levels. But you start every level, I believe, as just in your human form. And this is by far your weakest form that you could be in. Like, when you're in your human form, I think all you can do is punch and kick. You don't have any special abilities or any crap like that. So you're very weak, very vulnerable. So the only way you could really feasibly get through the game how you're intended to is to go into your beast forms and power up. Power up. I think that's the the voice sample it uses. Power up. And when you go into these beast forms, you obviously get many powers, many abilities. You're stronger and everything. So you want to stay in these beast forms as much as possible. And the point I'm getting at is that to defeat these adversaries, these enemies, whatever, these bosses and whatever evil in the story of this game, in the end, you have to defeat them. Otherwise, I don't know, whatever, the world gets taken over, destroyed, whatever, you know, that kind of deal. And to do that, you feasibly really have to use these bestial forms. So, kind of like if you abstained from your shadow self in this example, you would actually be hurting everyone else. That you would be hurting everyone else, not just yourself, but you'd be hurting everyone else, because the main way to defeat these enemies would be to use your evil or whatever, your bestial self, your dark side, to beat the enemies, the greater enemy, whatever, in this case. So if you abstained from doing that and just stayed in your human side, well, you'd probably die, and you'd fail on your mission. You'd die, and all of your whatever the enemies, the evil guys would do, they would succeed. And yeah, so going into your bestial form would actually be a net positive for everybody in this regard, if you want to go by that. Which I thought was kind of an interesting thing I considered there in this regard. And yeah, that was the examples I wanted to bring up in this topic involving games, at least, that I thought of. But just some things I wanted to bring up from my own experience or whatever is, like, I feel like I've been doing this to a degree. Like, I've kind of, the one channel I listen to sometimes whenever he uploads, is pretty infrequently, but that I've listened to him for a few videos. It was the Silent Hunter, as I mentioned in some other video, but he basically kind of was saying, in his opinion, and I kind of agree with it, is that the morality that we have, that we think about in this realm or whatever, this place that we reside in, the morality has not been, at least from what he was saying and what I kind of believe, not from him saying it, but I kind of thought this myself as well, and him saying it kind of reinforced, like, you know, maybe I'm not crazy in this regard. But just like the languages, just like time, just like all these concepts, these are constructs of the system. They're constructs of this system, this human society, whatever. These were constructs that were made and formed and whatever for us to make us easier to control or whatever, or control us, I don't know, you know, whatever purpose. They're not made for our benefit, I would say. Not overall, at least, not in an obvious sense. And I would say that our whole quote-unquote morality system that we generally have here or whatever, that we talk about or whatever that we regard is, I would say, yeah, that morality system, just the same as time, just the same as all these other constructs in this society that we know are constructs, is the same. Like, the morality thing is the same. Like how can I say this? I'll say it like that. I no longer feel guilt. And this is a concept that I think people have tried to push to some degree, I guess. Is like that the morality, they say that the morality is a universal thing because we feel guilt deep down or something like that. We feel guilt for doing these things. Even if there's no one around or something around those lines. And I can see what they're trying to get at with that, but I don't really agree with that anymore, because I've realized doing certain things that these things do not automatically give you feelings of guilt. And in that regard, I think it completely puts a damper on that point, that these are universal morality laws or whatever. And that's why I'm saying I don't think they are at all. Because me, like, if I do something quote-unquote bad or against the what moral code of what people might think here or whatever, what we've been taught is evil and bad and unjust, I no longer feel guilt from that. And one might say, oh, well, that means you're a sociopath, you fucking psycho. I don't know, maybe I am. I mean, definitely by this society, I feel like an alien, so maybe I am a fucking crazy-ass psychopath. But I don't really think so. In fact, I think I've become a much more caring person as I've gone on this journey or whatever. I care about others more than I ever probably did. Even when I was following these quote-unquote moral laws and all that stuff that we've been fed. I feel, I guess you could say, good about this in a way. Like, I don't feel guilt anymore. I almost, like, maybe I still feel guilt sometimes, but I almost never feel guilt anymore, especially not from quote-unquote breaking these laws or going against these rules that we've been given and such. Like, and the same can be said, like, okay, let's just go with a simple example or whatever, is there have been a few times, believe it or not, where I've been asked out or something, or I've been, some girls or something have shown interest in me or something like that. Just go with the example. And I used to feel, it hasn't happened many times, but the few times I have, so that's why it sticks out in my mind somewhat in this regard, is when I had to tell them no, or basically like, oh, I'm not interested. Actually, it was also some guys, actually, funny enough. But it was mostly guys, I think. Yeah, so do with that as you will. But when I had to reject these people, it was something I didn't do very often. And I felt bad doing it. I did not feel good at all. In fact, I could almost say that I don't know, but I probably felt worse rejecting them than I did. The fuck was that? Oh, shit. What in the fuck was that noise? But I probably felt worse rejecting them than them being rejected. And I had been rejected before as well, a few times. I wasn't really that much of a person that would be asking people out, but I've done a few times in my more naive time, my naive age or whatever. And yeah, it didn't feel good, but I could tell that some of them, they've probably rejected enough people, or maybe they haven't, and they just never felt guilt from doing something like that, or whatever, guilt, that bad feeling. And one might say that these people are just desensitized sociopaths. They don't have any care for any people, and maybe that's true. But one could say as well, like I'm trying to say here, is that maybe they are doing it right in some degree. They are not feeling guilt over something that is not something they should really feel guilt over at all. It is maybe this is not like the best example because, I don't know, this isn't one of those Christian 10 Commandments sort of deal, but, you know, thou shalt not covet objects, which I agree with, just because I don't see any sense in coveting any material objects here, for one, so that's an easy one. Thou shalt not kill, or whatever. I don't have any desires or wants to do that, but, you know, even then, I don't know, that's a thing. Thou shalt not, take, steal, or, is that one of them, or something like that? Just, you know, so many of these things, I honestly forget a lot of them, but, in all examples, like, I've stolen before. I'm not saying I steal, like, crazy amounts of stuff, like I'm some fucking ringleader here, but I've done the deed before, and let me tell you, I realize, at least for me realizing that this place, like, I'm not really harming anybody by doing that, especially from, like, some of these bigger stores or something like that, because I realize the money is all kind of bullshit, and most of them are just getting a kickback or whatever, tax write-off or whatever. They're getting the money, the fucking stuff doesn't matter to them kind of deal, like. So, me, I have not felt bad at all, ever, when I've done these things. It's like, yeah, I just haven't felt bad at all, ever. And I think that gives power, not so much just for this material world, but as if we're going to be going by this topic, the shadow self, or whatever, the evil part of yourself, I would say that this is me embracing that, or accepting that, to some degree. Like, I don't know, It's a bullshit moral system that we have, is what I'm saying. So maybe that isn't even your shadow side. You know what I mean? Like, because if there is no morality, or if it's a joke or whatever, then maybe it isn't even immoral. Maybe it isn't even the shadow side there. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to get at with that. But, like, I don't really get certain emotions that much anymore. I was never, like, a very super aggressive person, so I would never get, like, I've gotten to the point sometimes, like, very rarely, but anger and stuff like that, rage, I haven't really gotten that kind of, like, that exact, like, feeling, rage, that kind of deal, but I've gotten angry, of course, everybody does, but I've never gotten to the point where I was like, man, I'm going to destroy something or someone, or, you know, some kind of thing like that. I've never gotten to that point, so I can't really say from example, but potentially, obviously trying to master that would be a good thing, because there is much power in anger. There's much power in anger and that kind of thing. Like, I'm not saying that you want to be like the dark side or whatever from Star Wars, I don't know, but I'm saying that there's obviously much power in this. And I'm not saying being like megalomaniacs or whatever, trying to just be like, oh, all consumed by power. It's just, power is a part of us. Power is us. We are power. We are powerful beings, obviously. And I guess kind of the whole topic summarized, trying to get to the end of this, what I'm trying to get here. I could talk about more, but I'm kind of losing it. Or I'm kind of losing coherence here or whatever. I'm forgetting certain things, I guess. But end topic is that we probably should not try to completely remove this shadow side, this evil side of ourselves in some way, and maybe not even look at it like that, but more so mastering it, become taming it, be controlling it, because at the end of the day, if you want to go by the yin-yang thing, we are equal parts evil and equal parts good, or whatever you want to go by. Equal parts beast, equal parts spiritual being, or whatever. Equal parts good, equal parts bad. So, to completely abstain from that, or completely get rid of the the evil side, or believe that we've done that, we are, at the very least, reducing our actual power, our abilities, or whatever, by a massive, significant degree, significant margin. Basically, we shouldn't do that, and we should instead try to look at it like we are mastering that side. We don't want to get rid of it, because that is where likely a lot of our actual power does come from at the same time. Like, yeah, there needs to be a balance, but we shouldn't try to completely neuter it, or whatever, silence it, ignore it, suppress it, because that is likely where a very large majority of our abilities, our powers, our everything comes from, is this shadow side. But my fingers are getting a little bit cold now, and I think the video's been long enough. Hopefully I got the point out. Thanks for the idea for the video. Oh, and that's what I was going to say, is that since this is a response video specifically for Christoph's topic, this is definitely not a synchronicity here. This is not something that I thought of and then you uploaded it after I thought it, or the other way around. Is that I'm literally responding to what you made. So yeah, this is not a synchronicity. This is just a simple response kind of deal on the general topic. So thanks for the idea, I guess. Something to talk about while I was going on this little walk. And yeah, if it is not horrible out tomorrow, I will probably do another walk like this. I'll explain then why I'm taking so long on some of my, I guess, more related to my channel videos. But don't worry, I'm going to be getting back to them. But yeah, once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.